Hello, and welcome to today's 2026 webinar series. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this webinar is being recorded and all presentation materials will be posted on our website. If you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A feature, and if time allows, our speakers will jump into that at the end. I'd now like to introduce you to today's speakers, Brandon Smith and Bradley Taylor with Frazier Deeter Advisory, who will be speaking to you today about navigating CMMC before and after certification. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have got a good bit to cover today, so we are going to jump right into this. As mentioned, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. We're going to try to get to them at the end, so if we don't hit it while we're going, doesn't mean we've forgotten it. It means we're trying to be very efficient with time. And so we are going to get going on this presentation here. There we go. So, as mentioned, we're going to kind of talk about CMMC and where we are on that. Our idea today is to, not only talk about CMMC compliance, but help everyone understand that this is an ongoing process and think more long-term about it. We'll do some intros so you know who you're spending 30 minutes with today. So my name's Brandon Smith. I'm a partner with Frazier Deeter Advisory. I'm located in our Huntsville, Alabama office. Been working with government contractors either through consulting and public accounting or in industry for approximately 20 years. I run our national GovCon practice, do a lot of outsourced CFO services, a lot of proposal pricing strategies, and just kind of overall accounting and finance services for our clients. And I will turn it over to our co-host today, Mr. Taylor.
Hey, I'm Brad Taylor. So, a little bit about me. I'm ex-military. I actually retired from the United States Air Force, did InfoSec and ComSec while I was in the Air Force. So I've been living in the NIST space for forever, it seems like. And so I've done a hundred different modalities from Swift all the way to PCI, HIPAA, and so have a pretty large, broad understanding of most cybersecurity modalities that are out there.
Excellent. Brad, if I don't tell you enough, thank you for your service. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
All right, let's jump into this. So, Brad, let's assume we've got some new people to GovCon. They're trying to figure it out, or maybe they've been in GovCon and been living under a rock for a while. What is CMMC? Tell us like high level, give us the elevator pitch for it.
Yeah, so well, CMMC, that stands for Cyber Maturity Model Certification. So what that is you're going to start seeing on contracts that are coming out for around November time. They're going to say, hey, do you have a CMMC level 1 self-assessment, CMMC level 2 self-assessment? What that's doing is the way the government's going through and ensuring that our contractors are securing their environment. They're securing the products that they are creating for the contracts that they.
So if we were going to put it in layman's terms, I'm building something and I've got a guidance chip in it. If the bad guys know what that guidance chip is, even though it's not, necessarily classified, it could help them hack it and do stuff we don't want them to do. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes, because it might not be classified, it might not be secret, but it could be CUI, which that's basically you're looking at controlled unclassified information, or you can look at FCI, which is going to be your federal contract information. So both of those are covered under CMMC.
So this could cover some people who maybe don't realize they're covered, right? And that they need to understand
Correct.
exactly what it is. Okay.
Correct.
All right. So we got some people, and we'll kind of break this into buckets of our new people who are learning about CMMC or early in their journey on it. You work with a lot of companies that are somewhere in this process, and we're going to hit some people who are maybe a little bit further on along. But for those that aren't, are organizations waiting too long? I know to get started. I know this got kicked down the road, and I think we first heard the term CMMC or the acronym CMMC maybe 5 or 6 years ago, it seems like roughly
Yeah.
when it first started coming about, and then kick down the road. Now it's
Yep.
here. Are people waiting too long still from what you're seeing?
From what I'm seeing out in the real world, the answer is yes. So if you're just now starting to look at doing CMMC level two self-assessment, you're a little bit behind the eight ball. On average, it will take a company anywhere between 3 months, 6 months, or even 12 months to get ready for it. 3 months is being generous, saying that you do have most of your stuff in place, like you have an SSP, that's your security site plan. You actually know how to document one, you have policy and procedures to support it, and of course, evidence. And a lot of times, people, when they're first starting out, they don't even know what CUI data they're holding or where it lives. And so, yeah, if you're just starting out now, you're a little bit behind the eight ball, but there are people that are out there that can help you prepare for these assessments and get you ready for those. And I would recommend reaching out to them.
So on that front, what are you seeing, or what are clients that you're working with telling you they're seeing when, from their primes or from maybe their government customers? What are they saying to our clients, and what feedback are they getting as this comes into play and becomes a reality?
So a lot of the subcontractors belong to a prime, the prime will push down basically a requirement saying you have to be CMMC level two certified. Well, the issue that we run into is a lot of times those primes are not telling the subs what CUI data they're sharing with them. And so there's a lot of back and forth trying to figure out what is CUI data, am I storing, am I not storing it? So that is one that I would definitely recommend if you're starting out your process or your journey, is make sure that prime or that DOW contract that you're getting from the contract you won, sure that's telling you what CUI data is being shared with you, what's flowing down. And then also with that flow down, if you're a sub and you have another sub underneath you that's creating a screw that's classified as CUI, they need to also know that you're sharing CUI data with them.
So when people are responding to proposals, looking at teaming things, what is something they may see in a solicitation that maybe they haven't seen before that now, CMMC is coming into play? Like, I've heard the term CPAR score. What does that mean?
Yep. So when you're looking at your contracts, you're going to look for the keywords. You're going to look for FAR. And so what FAR stands for is Federal Acquisition Regulation. And so what that is, that's basically FCI. So that's any federal contract information you have to secure it. That's going to be a level one self-assessment through CMMC. Now, you also need to look for the word DFARS. So it's the same thing, but the D in front of it means it's Department of War. And so it's going to bring in that CMMC level two assessment. So it could be a self-assessment or a C3PO assessment. So you want to definitely make sure you look at those in your contracts. If those words come out, you're involved in CMMC. And then also, you'll hear a lot of people talk about SPURS. So a SPURS score. Oh, excuse me, I'm gonna look at my acronyms here because we go through so many of them.
You
So
know, we live
SPUR
by
is
acronyms in this world.
oh yeah. So SPURS stands for Supplier Performance Risk System. And so what that is every year you're going to go through and you're going to put a score, and it's going to be a score of a 0 to 110. 110 being a perfect score. 88 is actually the very bare minimum to pass. So not an 80, an 88. And so what the DoD is doing, or DOW, is they're watching those spur scores. If those spur scores start to fluctuate really heavily, so say you do a level two self-assessment, you score 108 out of 110, did really good. Well, then that triannual comes up and they say, hey, you need a level two done by a C3PO company. If that score dips below an 80, it's going to flag you. And so you might lose chances to win contracts because of that. So that's one of those that you have to treat it as a living, breathing program. It's not just a project that hey, we scored, we're good, let's put it in the closet and don't worry about it until next year. No, 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 no. There are things that you have to touch. You basically have to love on this thing to make sure that it stays compliant for the whole year. It's a living, breathing program.
All right, excellent. Let's kind of move forward a little bit. So we had some people that are some attendees on this that maybe they're new to this process, and maybe they're, just hearing about it, just getting into government contracting, learning about this. We have some other people who are probably, going through their assessments. Maybe they've got it scheduled, maybe they're halfway through it, but they're at some point in this assessment process. What do those people need to be thinking about? What challenges have you seen, rather, where, if haven't started the assessment yet, maybe it's something they can address now. Maybe it can help them get their assessment done a little quicker. But like, what are you seeing from the assessment side?
So on the assessment side, we've seen some really great clients. So OSCs is what we call them. So it's organization seeking compliance. We've seen some great ones. I've seen some really fantastic SSPs have a whole bunch of documentation to support it, and they usually do really good in their assessments. I've seen others where they didn't even know what an SSP was. And so we had to stop the assessment immediately. But no, 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 no. We're going to have to do this different. You have to go to an RPO, get some assistance so that way they can help you. The main thing we run into with most of our clients is honestly data discovery. What data do you carry? Where is it being stored at? You'll see a lot of them give us a diagram. So here's our data flow diagram. This is where the information's supposed to be at. But then in reality, is it really there? And we've had some to where we found out that it wasn't. It was in other locations. So it makes the scope get a little bit bigger and a little bit more stuff gets pulled in. So even if you're in the middle of your assessment, even if you completed your assessment or you're just beginning, always ensure that you know where your data lives. Make sure that you scope it correctly so it doesn't come back and bite you in the butt later.
All right, so you threw out some terms there about documentation. We know I deal with DCA auditors a lot. I know they love their
Hmm.
documentation. And to your point, I tell people, hey, you're better off not having documentation than documenting and doing it some way different. Like you need to follow what you're doing. In all
Yep.
that, if you were going to weight documentation versus, the technical side of this, the actual securities in place, is it equal? Does it lean one way or the other? How would you kind of talk about how those two work together?
In all honesty, they work hand in hand. Now, the issue that we usually run into with most OSCs is that the implementation or the security configuration, it's sound, it's great. But everybody has an issue of trying to describe what they do for their job, basically. And so policy and procedures are usually lacking. Like you'll see some that will say, hey, we do a password change every 30 days. But then the SSP, which is supposed to tell you how you meet those controls, will have something a little bit of a variance in it and it won't match. Those things pop up all the time. And so documentation is probably where most OSCs are going to run into a little bit of trips or a little bit of pitfalls. Nice thing is most of those are weighted as a level one, so they can be corrected within the 10-day window after assessment. But mostly, most teams and most security teams that we've talked to, they know what they're doing. It's just having them describe what they did onto paper is where the issue comes in.
All right, understood. You threw out 10 days. I keep hearing this date, November 10th, I think, thrown around. What does
Mhm.
that mean? What does that date mean to me?
So during November, you're going to start seeing contracts coming from the DOW or from the primes, and what they're going to be requiring is that most OSCs, if you do hold CUI data, you're going to be required to have a pass a level two self-assessment. That's for this year. Come next year, those level two self-assessments are going to be a level two C3PAO assessments. That's where you're going to have a lead CCA, another CCA or CCP, and a QA. And so it's a whole assessment process we go through. It usually runs about 3 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on the engagement.
So this year, I'm going to have to do a self check. Now, I
Yep,
may need some help with that to make sure I'm checking the right things. And, just like if you were checking yourself, right? My heart is maybe a little bit more important than my fingernail, right? I need to make
correct,
sure those. Next year, I got to go to the doctor though, right? And next year, the
correct.
doctor's got to give me the sign off. Is that right?
I did not will the assessments. Like I said, we've seen some self-assessments say, "Hey, I'm 110 out of 110," and we show up and it's a negative score. It's really bad. So be honest with yourself when you're doing these level two self-assessments. If you understand or you don't know what this control means, reach out to someone. Hey, reach out to me. I'll tell you exactly, hey, this is what assessor's looking for. I can't tell you how to fix it or how to do it, but I know what I'm looking for. But there are resources out there. So please do reach out and don't be afraid to admit that, hey, I don't understand what I'm doing here because there's a lot of people in the same boat as you are.
So as you're working with different companies, are you seeing any common theme that separates, sometimes you have somebody that flies through something, everything's, well-oiled machine, they come out great on the other side. Other times maybe, hey, they're hitting roadblocks every corner they turn. Have you noticed a theme or anything you see between the ones that are getting through this process very smoothly with their assessors versus those who are maybe taking a little bit longer and having more issues pop up?
So there is one pitfall that we see a bunch. So you'll have a lot of managed service providers or security service providers. They all go out and they'll tell an OSC, "Oh, hey, we can get you 100% compliant." That's a fallacy, and I hate to burst that bubble. And someone's told you that, I do feel sorry, and that's not accurate. The most a managed service provider, security service provider can give you is right around probably like 95%. There's still stuff you have to do as the OSC. You're still hiring people to talk that for your CMMC. You're still training them. Yep, that's in CMMC also. So you can't be 100% on that. Other things that we've ran into is honestly just lack of policy or scope. A lot of people don't understand what they're securing for data, and so that kind of comes and bites them in the butt a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, is there kind of maybe anything that kind of we're going to circle back to this a little bit, but anything you'd maybe tell someone in this process and the assessment stage that you've seen that could help them? One maybe piece of advice on
Yeah.
here.
So I recommend going out, downloading the level two self-assessment, especially for this year. Review all those controls. That's so there's 110 parent controls, but there's a total of 320 controls counting all sub controls. That's a lot to go through. By all means, read through those. If you do not understand those, reach out to an RPO, reach out to a C3PO and tell them like, look, I don't want you to tell me how to fix it. Just tell me what you're looking for. Help explain this to me. That's going to give you the best bang for your buck. That's going to get you a lot further ahead than most other ones. Definitely don't be an ostrich and stick your head in the sand and hope it's going to go away. It's not. It's here and it's going to get worse. So I would rather y'all start off on the right foot. So by all means, any questions you have when you're reviewing those controls, because they're daunting at times, especially if you're not in cybersecurity, definitely reach out.
All right. Excellent. All right, let's move to our third leg of the stool with our folks who maybe they've done the assessment, they're already finished with it. They hit the finish line, they're completely done, right, Brad?
Oh yeah. No, never. I wish it was that easy, but no. And so we have ran across this real world. We went in with an OSC. We were a C3PO. I was a lead assessor. Everything went great. It's year one, so there's not a whole bunch of stuff you're trying to get. Everything's brand new for the environment. Cool. Scored 110 out of 110. Did awesome. Well, we signed up for them so that way we can come do the in between years. So that's when they have to do their self assessment between the triannual because every 3 years you have to have a C3PO level two assessment done if that's in your contract. So we signed up, came in for the in between years, and we showed up and we're like, cool, show us your SSP. The question we got was, what's that? And like, wait a minute, no, we just did this last year. What's going on? What about your environment? When's the last time you logged into your environment? Oh, we haven't done that in a year. Okay, so now we're failing because there are touch bases that you have to do, like 90-day IAM reviews. So you're reviewing your user accounts and your admin accounts, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to. You got RBACs that you're looking at, vulnerability scans. So there's all these little touch points you have to do throughout the whole year. Well, none of that was done. And so all of a sudden they went from a 110 out of 110 to an 80 out of 110, which they failed. And that was because they did not do the touch maintenance that's required. Like I said, it's a living, breathing program. You have to live on this thing.
So is that what you'd say is the most common misunderstanding then? Is that people, think they've done this and all of a sudden they say, hey, we don't have to do this again for 3 years, and they just drift away from what they were doing?
Correct. And speaking of drift, we've seen that too, to where they'll start out and there's only there's only two admins, and then you have that in your matrix responsibility, you have it in your policy and procedures that there's only two admins. Well, then we come back the second year and it's like, wait a minute, you have six admins now, but your policy and procedure and your SSP do not show those. So there's a little bit of drift that goes on. Same thing, people add in extra firewalls or they'll change some other stuff and it starts to drift. And so an SSP is a living, breathing document. So a lot of people hear this where they're like, "Oh, we can't touch it once it's done." No, 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 no. You're supposed to. It is supposed to represent your environment that you got certified today. So if you did change yesterday, that change needs to be in that SSP. So like I said, you need to love on it and you need to build on it.
All right. So on that note, it's still a very active M&A market. We're seeing a lot of clients combined with other ones. What happens if I have a significant change in my structure? What if I buy a company? What if I hit a couple of contracts, I double in size? What if I decide I want to spin out a new division? So what if I have some kind of internal organizational structural change that makes sense from a business standpoint? How does that translate into my CMMC compliance?
So it translates 100%. So if that CMMC environment had a significant change, so even if it from the parent company, something went down and it did affect that CUI environment that was certified, you're going to have to document it. You're going to document your SSP with what's changing is coming on. You're going to make sure your policy and procedures are updated. You're going to go through your self-assessment and you're going to document that in your self-assessment. And so all that stuff has to be documented because when I come back from my third year, that's one of the questions we're going to ask. Hey, have you had any changes, any significant changes since the last time we did your level two C3PO assessment? The answer should be yes. And it should be, this is what we changed. This is what happened there in this year, this change control that we did. This is our risk assessment we did against it because it involved a risk that we thought was high. Okay, how'd you mitigate that risk? All that comes back into play. So yeah, any changes to your environment, you got to document it.
All right. You've talked a lot about the process after, you get your certification from the C3PAO. Any other kind of resources people need to be thinking about post, you mentioned this has to be a living, breathing document. Anything else they need to think about on that post
Uh,
certification?
Training, honestly. And so training, the DoD has a wonderful training website you can go to. Most of it's free, but do training on like CUI, how you're going to document it. If you do have some paper form, how do you stamp it? How do you mark it? How do you secure it? So training, honestly, there's a lot of times we'll see OSCs will do the same thing. They just fail in the training, like they're not doing their annual training like they're supposed to. That should also be done.
All right, excellent. Let's um let's move along here a little bit and let's maybe just think about some advice. People are on here, they want to learn something, they want to maybe understand this process, understand how to be a little bit better. Any kind of parting advice or anything you'd say to companies early in this journey, or maybe haven't started, really early in this journey, hadn't even started yet. What advice would you give them?
So if you haven't started yet and you understand that you have the possibility to have FCI or CUI data in your environment, the first thing I would do is figure out where that data is living. One of the easiest solutions that we've seen is a hub and spoke design. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take all your CUI data, your FCI data, and you're going to store it in one location. And you're going to lock that one fully down. And so anybody that needs access to it, they're going to have to go through your secure access. So therefore, you can kind of keep it from leaking out of its shell, let's say, and increasing your scope. So yeah, no, if you're starting your first step on this journey, data discovery. Let's find out where your data lives, not where it's supposed to live, but where it actually lives. And then if it's out of the sorts where it doesn't need to be, let's pull it together. Let's put it in one area and then let's secure that one area. We can always add more security on afterwards.
All right, excellent. What about companies near assessment? Any advice for them? Maybe they've got the assessors
Yeah.
coming out next month, or maybe they just started. But what would you have for those folks?
So if you are going through an assessment or you're gearing up for one, ask questions. I mean, the assessors, like I said, they cannot tell you the answer, but man, they can provide guidance as much as they can. So if you're like, hey, I don't understand this control, why you're knocking us as not met, ask those questions. and they'll give you like, hey, as an assessor, I am looking for this. Take that information. If you have an RPO that you're working with or somebody that helped you with readiness, feed that information to them. Hey, our assessor said this. Can you help us understand this a little bit more? That's what those RPO companies are for. They're supposed to help bridge that gap between what the assessor's wanting to see and what you actually have or what you need to show. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
All right. And what about our folks who they're already assessed? They got the clean bill of health from their doctor, the minimum of 88. What ends up, what do those guys need to be thinking about?
On that one there, making sure that you're doing your in between years correctly. Don't pencil whip it. There's a lot of companies that will, and it will come back and bite you in the butt. If you're doing your own in between your self-assessment for level two and not have another a C3PO company, an RPO company come in to do readiness with you, make sure you're answering those truthfully. Uh, I would recommend reaching out to an RPO or a C3PO to do that. Only reason is a lot of companies, a person that's going through those checklists, they're answering to someone else. They're answering to someone above them. And sometimes that person above them doesn't want to hear bad news. They want to hear good news, which is nothing wrong with that. But that can askew what's really going on in your environment. So I would definitely recommend reaching out to a third party because there's no bias in that. We're just going to tell you exactly what's wrong.
So you mentioned the person above them potentially. We may have some executives on here who say, "Hey, I've got an IT guy that's handling this." What do the executives need to be thinking about? What questions should they be asking of their team, and where does their mind need to be on this? If they've got maybe they've got someone that they think's handling, maybe it's a third party. But how does the executives need to be thinking about this, and as they think about their business as a whole?
So honestly, with the executives, risk. It's all risk based. So as an executive, you're going to look at, hey, if we do not have a certified level two assessment, what's the risk? What are we going to lose in money? What are we going to lose on contracts? And same thing, if we're not able to secure this type of data, what's the risk that someone else could get it? I mean, we got to remember this whole program started because China stole 1 terabyte worth of data on the F-35 program. That's the whole reason this is here. And that China didn't steal it from the DoD or DoW. They took it from a sub. A sub had too much information and it did not secure it correctly and it got leaked out. That's the whole purpose of this program is to stop that from happening.
All right, excellent. So I think if we were going to try to put a bow on this thing, you tell me what you think, but what I'm hearing is this has just got to become a part of your culture. This isn't a one-time project. You put a stamp on it and you stick it in the file cabinet or you put an email confirmation somewhere that this has got to be more ongoing. Is that the key takeaway that everyone needs to
Correct.
think about? Kind of last message here.
Yeah, correct. So just I like to keep it simple. I'm an ex-maintainer for I was an F-16 crew chief back in the day. So think of so think of the program for CMMC. You got to do maintenance on it. You got to put gas in it. You got to change the tires. Got to check the oil, change the filter, all that good stuff. And then the road that you're driving on is the CMMC contracts that you're going to be getting. So if you want a smooth ride, make it ride really good, you want to make sure your car's in order. Same thing.
All right. I think that's a great analogy. We are basically at the end of our time here. I'm going to throw up, we've got a couple of emails here. If you need anything that was discussed today, you guys may have noticed I'm the one asking questions because I don't know all this stuff. Reach out to Bradley. His email's right there on the screen. If you need something on the GovCon side, if you got some proposal help, you need some strategy help, you need to understand your accounting and finance, HR, your back office, reach out to me and I'm happy to help with that. I've not seen any questions pop up in the chat as long as I think I'm looking at the right place. I haven't seen any. So I think we will conclude our presentation here right on time. Brad, thank you for your expertise and your insight on this. And we appreciate everyone who was able to attend today.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, if y'all have any questions while you're reviewing your level two self-assessment or you're going through any type of assessment, you just have a question, send it to me. I'll give you as much information as I can without crossing the conflict of interest barrier.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you to our speakers for such a great presentation. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and presentation materials will be available on our website by end of day tomorrow. If you have any questions on our organization, our initiatives, or our upcoming events, please reach out to us by email at events@nsbgca.org. Thank you all again for joining us today. This does conclude our webinar, and we hope you join us again. Have a great day.